for my name to be announced, I closed my eyes. At 13, I was about to give the biggest performance of my life. The Minnesota Orchestra was on stage. They were playing Fanfare for the Common Man. I was up next to play a solo with the symphony. The soundproof doors opened, a rush of cold air came at me. I began the long walk across the stage. I was a chubby girl, awkward in my floor-length white dress. But on this day, I was also a concert artist who would lead an entire orchestra in a performance. The audience after the performance rose to their feet, cheering, "Bravo, bravo!" The applause seemed to go on forever as I left the stage and returned twice more for encore bows. It was a thrilling moment, and then it was over. Normal life resumed. Back in the dressing room, I changed out of my long white dress, and then my mom drove me to school. I got there in time for math class, and lucky for me, we had a test. My fellow students didn't even know where I'd been that day. To them, I was just one of the kids. They didn't understand the other me, the one who had just performed with the Minnesota Orchestra. So that was my conundrum as a child, was struggling with this talent that I had. I remember being embarrassed walking home from school carrying my violin case, which sounds so silly now, but you just want to fit in as a kid. And one of the ways in which I didn't fit in at all was that I was fat. So I have struggled with my weight my whole life. I have just learned how to manage it a little bit better now. But I was 35 pounds overweight as a child. And darn if my mom wasn't a gourmet cook. And she would make all this delicious food, and then she would leave me with my babysitter, Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann of Minnesota. Grew up in the same town. She's 10 years older, although she doesn't look it. And she called it her share period when she babysat me because her hair went all the way down to here. And I wanted that hair so bad. But my mom would leave, and she would say, "Now, Michelle, don't let Gretchen eat any of the food that I just made, a whole spread." And the minute the door would close, Michelle would go, "Let's go for it." And she added grape soda, too. So my mom would come home, and my best friend would be near me, Molly, and she would say, "Who ate all the food?" And I would say, "Molly did." The only problem was Molly kept getting thinner, and I kept getting wider. You remember Levi's jeans? They would have the waist and the height on the back. I mean, talk about a downer for self-esteem. So the minute I would buy them, I would go and get a Sharpie, and I would cross it out because I was fearful that my waist was going to be bigger than my height. So what finally changed me? A boy in high school. I wanted to date him. I was a sophomore, he was a senior, and I overheard him in the hallway say, "I think Gretchen's just such a nice girl, but she's just too fat. I could never date her." So that day I went on a diet and lost 35 pounds. And no, I never dated him. But many times people say, well, how does a classical violinist end up becoming Miss America? And it was as unexpected for me as you might imagine. So at 17, I quit the violin. My parents were devastated. Wanted me to find another avenue in which to use this talent to accomplish another goal. So in the meantime, I went off to Stanford University, concentrated on my academics, and I got a phone call from my mom. "Gretchen, I found the perfect thing for you to try because I just got a brochure in the mail, and it's from Miss America, and it says 50% of a contestant's total points are based on talent. I think you should try this." And I said, "Are you nuts?" I mean, this was definitely never on my radar screen for the above-mentioned reasons. Well, my mom's a very motivating person, and before long, I was in tandem with her to try and accomplish this. And so, you know, there were a lot of hurdles along the way. If you haven't noticed, I'm short. I was from Minnesota, which wasn't known as like a huge pageant state. I played the classical violin that had never won, never has since then. So there were a lot of uphill battles for this kind of a goal. And in the book, I really sort of set out the strategy that my mom and I worked on together to try and make this happen. So what happens after Miss America? Well, it's a wonderful accomplishment, but I'm very honest in this book about some of the harsh treatment I also got as a result of having that added to my resume. So first and foremost, it's almost as if my entire other resume evaporated. And the way in which I open the book is actually with a catchy question. After I had won, I was dubbed the Smart Miss America, which I thought, oh, this is a good headline at first. Well, not so much, because when I got to my first press conference in New York City, there was another woman, unfortunately, a reporter, who deliberately tried to take me down. And it was her goal to make me look stupid just because. And so she gave me a test during the press conference and asked me all kinds of questions that I bet hardly any of us could answer right now. Who's on the $50 bill? What year did the Vietnam War end? Who's Mary Jo Kopechne? And so on. Until question number 19 was, have you ever done drugs? And the first line of my book, have you ever had sex? At which point, the two reporters from Minnesota in the front row almost passed out. The Minnesota nice thing's actually true. And it came as a shock to me that people were going to deliberately do this to a young woman who had just accomplished something just because. And the reason I write about this in the book is because women and men have faced that same kind of shaming, whether we're not thin enough, not mom of the year enough, not smart enough, not having it all enough, or whatever the case is. And I wanted other women to know that I have faced the exact same thing. And even after accomplishing something like that, that she would try to bring me down. You will also have to read in the book how I got revenge. It's not really in my nature to do that, but I did with her. And it actually felt pretty darn good. Also, one of my celebrity judges was a famous movie director. And I just want to read a bit about what he